Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot we have the star. While searching through images, someone stumbled upon an isolated corner of Kazakhstan, and here they found a large pentagram etched into the ground, which of course may have set off some alarm bells. The 5-point star is surrounded by a circle and is very clearly visible, and of course once the image began circling the internet, people were coming up with only the most wild theories and explanation. In the end, it turned out to be the exact opposite of something sinister. It's actually the outline of a park that was made into the shape of a star. The star is so clearly marked because of the roadways, and where there's no road, there's a lot of trees, which makes the symbol stand out even more. It's like the best possible outcome for this one, honestly. A beautiful tree-lined park in the shape of a star. How lovely. In our number 9 spot today we have the bunker. If you were to take a nice little scroll through the deserts of New Mexico, at some point you'd see something etched into the ground. They appear to be 2 large diamonds that are surrounded by a pair of overlapping circles. Okay, likely not a naturally occurring situation, so what could it be? Maybe an ancient geoglyph? Maybe some sort of cool secret Area 51 style place? No, of course it's just allegedly the site of some hidden bunker that belongs to the Church of Scientology. Apparently this cult uses these symbols to guide Scientologists who are returning to Earth after fleeing a planet's Armageddon. Okay. Sure. There are other examples of strange and hidden places that somehow link back to this cult, so it really has me wondering just how many properties and areas that they have and what they're up to. Maybe that explanation really is the truth behind these symbols, but what if it's not? Despite how controversial this cult is, they've managed to grow quite widespread, and they've gained some quite well-known people over the years, like Tom Cruise and John Travolta. So random. In our number 8 spot today we have the cauldron. Google Earth can basically take you anywhere except for the areas they of course have blocked off for a variety of reasons. And when I say basically anywhere, sometimes I mean even the most absurd places, including right to the edge of a boiling cauldron of lava. That's right, you can head right to the edge of the volcano that is located on an island in the Vanuatu chain in the South Pacific. It is cool because it's likely the closest I'll ever get to seeing this kind of view in real life, but it's also terrifying to look into that cavern that's filled with bright, hot magma. Like, even just looking at this photo, you can almost feel the heat and the panic of being at the mouth of a volcano. Very cool, but also very scary. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Nevada Triangle. This image from Google Maps captures a spooky symbol that is lurking in the deserts of Nevada. I think conspiracy theorists have forever ruined triangles just in general, but this large one with all the circles inside, coupled with the minimal answers on what it is, definitely makes for a bit of an eerie sight. Right now, the most popular theory as to what this could be is a bombing target. Apparently close by is an Air Force base, so that theory truly would make quite a bit of sense. It could also be some sort of abandoned airstrip perhaps, but of course with any mystery on the internet, there are more very wild theories out there. Of course there's the obligatory "it's aliens" theory, along with some sort of Illuminati idea, but it wouldn't be the internet without it. In our number 6 spot today we have the fire. As the satellites and little cars go by that document the imagery used on Google Maps, they can't exactly predict or control who or what is going to be happening in the area captured. Sometimes it might capture someone who will eventually be blurred out on their front lawn. Sometimes it captures accidents, and in this case it captured an absolutely raging field fire in Arkansas. It would already be terrifying from the ground, but seeing it from this vantage point really shows how large and powerful it is. Someone on Reddit made a good point, saying that it appears as though there are people on the south side, which likely means that the fire is contained and controlled, thankfully, but that doesn't really make it any less cool or interesting to see. In our number 5 spot today we have the Valley of Dolls. Google Maps, especially the street view, is such a great way to look around a place and kind of get your bearings before you even get there. I mean, I remember almost 8 years ago now, before I moved to Toronto, I spent hours digitally walking around the streets, seeing my home, where I was gonna go to school, all that jazz. It was super exciting. But sometimes you walk around a city so unlike your own that it absolutely shocks you, and that is likely what would happen if you were to just stumble upon the town or village of Nagoro in Japan, which is known as the Valley of Dolls. A woman named Ayano Tsukimi grew up in the village and remembers a time when it was full of families and other children just like her, but during her years in secondary school, she and her family moved to Osaka. Ayano continued to grow up, she married and had her own kids, all the while her parents ended up moving back to the town. After her mother passed away, she also moved back to the village in order to help care for her father, and this is when she realized that the population of the town had dropped drastically since her time here as a child. While living here and trying to keep her garden free of crows, she made a scarecrow that resembled her father and she placed it outside. When she realized that those living in the village began to mistake the scarecrow for her father, she had an idea to commemorate those in the village who had passed away with a scarecrow, and boom, $350 later, the town became an attraction for travelers and journalists. It's a bit eerie to peer through on Google Maps, but when the full story is revealed, it gets way less sinister and actually kinda sweet. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Costa Concordia. The Costa Concordia was a huge ship with 17 decks, 6 restaurants, and a 3-story theater. The ship was big enough to hold a whopping 4,200 passengers, so there were a lot of people on this boat on January 13th, 2012. On that day, the boat's captain wanted to sail a little closer to the island of Isla del Giglio than he normally would so that he could impress and salute the residents. He turned off the ship's alarm for the computer navigation system, which turned out to be just as terrible of an idea as you would think it is. He thought he knew the waters well enough to navigate by sight, but when the ship struck an underwater rock, things took a deadly turn. The ship capsized and sank, which unfortunately ended up taking the lives of some of the passengers on board. The captain, who is responsible for the accident in the first place, made one more awful mistake when he abandoned ship while passengers were still stuck on board. The recovery for the ship was the largest of its kind, as the huge ship had been entirely dismantled. You might be wondering why on earth I just told you an entire shipwreck story, and that is because both the wreck as well as the subsequent rescue efforts were visible on Google Earth for quite some time. The satellite imagery probably isn't even as near as terrifying as it must have been to be close during those terrifying days, but it does give us an idea of the size of this disaster. In our number 3 spot today, we have the crater. Space is very cool, but for every cool and interesting thing I learn about it, I also learn one equally or even more terrifying thing about it as well. It's a very scary place, and we truly have no control over the powers of it, which is exactly why this startling image found on Google Earth is an unsettling one. Somewhere in northern Arizona, there is a mark that is like an Earth scar, and it serves as a reminder of a 50,000-year-old meteor strike. When I call it a mark or a scar, I am greatly understating it, as this thing is a huge crater known as the Barringer crater. It's the result of a 150-foot slab of nickel iron that smashed into the Earth with the exploding force of 2.5 million tons of TNT. Yeah, this sure makes me glad I wasn't around 50,000 years ago. This natural disaster caused this natural landmark that serves as our reminder of just how small we really are. In our number 2 spot today, we have the scene. This is an image that went viral with people saying that if you typed in these certain coordinates, that you will see what people think is a man dragging a body down a dock and leaving a bloody trail behind. That would be gruesome, wouldn't it? When looking at the image, it does seem compelling, and that is pretty much what it looks like, although it's definitely still a little unclear. In fact, it was so compelling that Snopes actually did an article on it. The dock is located in the Netherlands, and according to their research into it, Snopes claims that the photo is just a few people walking, and they are likely accompanied by a sort of brown dog, who may have just jumped into the water and then left some watermarks, thus the reasoning for the red stained wood. That is definitely a less sinister explanation, and it's the one I'm hoping is true. In our number 1 spot today, we have the pond. Davy Lee Niles was 72 years old in 2006 when he disappeared. Sadly, for almost a decade, the case went cold as no one could find him or his car or even figure out what might have happened to him. That was until someone was decorating a Christmas tree in 2015 and was high up on a lift, and they spotted something deep within a pond nearby. That something they spotted turned out to be something that had also been visible on Google Maps for years, and in the end, it was the car that belonged to Davy. And when the authorities went to recover it, they were able to find his body inside. The car wasn't visible before because at ground level it's just too murky. While the satellite image taken from Google Maps makes it quite clear that there is something there, not too many people are taking a virtual tour around this body of water. Thankfully, that person in 2015 wasn't only aware of their surroundings, but they said something when they saw something, and it was able to lead to closure for the family of Davy.
Starting off this countdown, we have Amchitka Island. Located in Alaska, sections of this island are blurred out on Google Maps, maps, and no one really knows why this is. But it may have to do with the nuclear testing that once took place there. From the 1950s to the 1970s, Amchitka Island was the site of US underground nuclear testing. Nowadays, they are running tests to see if the island has any radioactive leakage there. If there isn't, then in 2025 it could become a wildlife reserve. But again, why is half of the island blurred out? Maybe that's the section where the nuclear testing took place. But why is it still blurred? A lot of people think that the military is doing some suspicious illegal activities there, and that's why. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. In our ninth spot, we have 2207 Seymour Avenue. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up. 2207 Seymour Avenue, located in Cleveland, Ohio, is a home where a horrific crime took place. From 2002 to 2004, Ariel Castro kidnapped 3 young women: Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Georgina De Jesus. He kept them captive in his home until 2013, when Amanda Berry escaped with her daughter and contacted the police. The police came to his house and rescued the other women. Castro was arrested within hours. He was sentenced to life plus 1,000 years in prison without parole. Due to the disturbing crimes that took place at his home, Google Maps decided to blur his house. In fact, the house has been named the House of Horrors. But a couple years back, his house was demolished to help the victims move on from their traumatizing past. Coming in at number 8, we have the French nuclear facility. The Arriva-La Hague nuclear fuel reprocessing facility in France is another place that is blurred out on Google Maps. This facility opened in 1976 and is responsible for treating nuclear fuel from several countries. Here's the thing though, this facility hasn't always been blurred out. By using the Google Earth History tab, you can see old Google Earth images of this facility. So now, why all of a sudden is it blurred out? What is going on there? Well, it may have something to do with the controversy it has received and the backlash it received from Greenpeace. Since 1997, Greenpeace has been trying to shut it down, saying that they dump 1 million liters of liquid radioactive waste per day in the ocean. That is severely messed up if that's true. Maybe that's why it's blurred out, so that people don't see what they're really up to with their nuclear waste. Moving on to number 7, we have the French prison. There are a number of prisons that are blurred out on Google Earth, including the Beaumet prison in Marseille. Now, why do they blur out images of prisons? Well, a couple of reasons. One, for privacy. But the main reason is so that the criminals don't know the layout of the prison. Basically, this prison wasn't always blurred. Following a successful jailbreak, France's Minister of Justice was like, why are there aerial images of this prison available online? And then that led to the prison getting blurred. But of course, you can still find older images of the prison on Google Maps that show what it looks like and its layout. In our 6th spot, we have the Antarctic Ice Shield. This is another pretty strange place to get blurred. But basically, halfway between Australia and Madagascar, there is a 22-kilometer long blur in the middle of the Antarctic Ice Shield. I mean, this place is one of the most isolated places on Earth. There's nothing but ice and penguins there. So why is it being blurred out? We don't know for sure, but people think that there is something hidden there that we're not allowed to see. Although it's thought to be owned by Australia, theory goes that Russia or the US have built a research facility there. The only way we'll know for sure is by visiting the place itself. So who's coming with me for this field trip? It'll be a lot of fun. Come on, just pack a snowsuit and lots of hot packs. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Mururoa Island. Located in French Polynesia, this island was first used for nuclear testing in 1966 by France. These tests apparently took place until 1996. That's when the French president shut down the facility. Why? Well, Greenpeace found out that these tests were polluting the water as far as Peru and New Zealand. In fact, many locals in Tahiti have claimed they have been affected by the radiation from the tests. Nowadays, the island is off limit to visitors and is guarded by French forces, which is probably why half of the island is blurred on Google Maps. Or maybe it's because they're still doing these nuclear tests. We may never know. Moving on at number 4, we have Elmira Correctional Facility. Elmira Correctional Facility, also known as The Hills, is a maximum security state prison in New York. This is another facility blurred on Google Earth. Why? Well, a number of reasons. 1, they have fears of an aerial attack. Number 2, they have fears that someone will use this information to plan an escape. And number 3, the prison is highly secure. Why would they want images of the building online for everyone to see? But it turns out that this location got blurred after a number of riots and mass escapes. Moving on to number 3, we have North Korea. Okay, is it even shocking that North Korea has sections of its country blurred? I mean, they are so secretive, so this isn't a surprise at all. Now, the area that is blurred is along the country's western shore. So people have thought that they are hiding something there, maybe a secret military project. Who knows? I mean, hey, the country is hiding so many things. Like I said, this one doesn't really come as a surprise. In our second spot, we have Paseo de los Naranjos. Located in Spain, this place translates to orange tree yard, and it is completely censored on Google Maps. No matter how close you try to zoom in on the map or the area close by, you won't be able to see anything. Why? Well, there's a lot of government buildings located there, so it's blurred out for security and privacy reasons, which makes sense. Many government or military buildings are blurred out on Google Maps for similar reasons. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Jeanette Island. Located in Russia, this island is said to contain a secret Russian military base. If you type this island into Google, you'll find a whole lot of nothing. Legit, it just looks like a bunch of water. It's not even registered on Google Maps as an island. When you type in its coordinates, you will see a message that says this island is unavailable. Now, before it was removed from the maps altogether, it wasn't even blurred out. It was actually blacked out. Like there was a full-on black mass just covering it. But when you zoomed in, you could see this icy mass, and that's all. According to Reddit user Exoplanetary Science, he said, and I quote, "Google rarely blacks out without reason. A search through Google Earth shows that this has been permanently blurred out, even in images dating back to the 1980s. I'm going to guess there's a concealed Russian military base located there, and possibly quite a substantial one." So, there you have it, folks. Secret Russian military base.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the pigeon people. Japan is the home to many wonderful things, and that includes the wacky, bizarre pigeon people of Google Earth. Yes, you heard me correctly. What looks absolutely terrifying on the surface is thankfully most likely just a strange prank, but basically it saw a group, all wearing pigeon heads, lined up on the sidewalk ready for the Google camera as it went by. It's definitely a strange sight to begin with, but it's made even weirder by the turn of their heads in order to follow the camera. Honestly, really unsettling when you first look at it. I mean, pigeons are already weird creatures, so this little prank definitely has a bit of an eerie feeling to it, but the good news is that it's likely just a fun group of students from the art school that is nearby to this weird scene found on Google Maps. In our number 9 spot today, we have the invitation. This weird Google Maps image comes to us from Memphis, Tennessee, and while I've never been, I've heard wonderful things. That is all except for this weird message that was found as someone was searching through Google Maps, and it's located on the top of the building. Someone wrote this message, and it's gotta be pretty large considering it was so easy to read even from this distance, but the message says, "Come downtown and play." I don't know what kind of Pennywise is out there writing these kinds of messages, but I know I'm not crazy, and there's something almost sinister feeling about it. It is likely some sort of marketing tactic or something of that nature. I mean, at least I hope it is, but from a distance, when it looks like it could be something that was spray painted by a random person, it just seems weird, you know? I just know I probably won't be RSVPing to this invite anytime soon. Thanks, but no thanks. In our number 8 spot today, we have the disposal. Mannequins are always creepy. I don't care, they just are. My old roommate was a hairdresser, and when she was in school, sometimes I'd go to get a glass of water in the middle of the night and be absolutely startled by the disembodied head I saw, and only after the near heart attack realize in my sleepy state that it in fact was just a mannequin head. Well, you can imagine people got a lot of the same sort of feeling when they were on Google Maps and saw this sight of all of these discarded mannequins that truly for a second looks like it's a pile of bodies sitting in the trash. How horrifying. This sight was seen on Google Maps in Chile, and it definitely was freaking people out. I wonder what these mannequins were used for. I mean, there's a ton of them, so it must have been used for some sort of clothing shop or like a seamstress or something, right? Maybe it's just wishful thinking, but that's what I'm choosing to believe. In our number 7 spot spot today we have friendship. This is one Google Maps sighting that doesn't have a lot of information behind it, which definitely makes it all the more eerie. Basically, this is just an image of a group of friends standing together in the desert. Maybe a little strange, but not so weird. Right? Well, yeah, except for the weird masks they're wearing and the fact that they're all staring directly at the camera. I'm sure the story behind this one is that these friends saw the Google Maps car coming and decided to play a little prank, probably similar to the pigeon people, but I mean, no one has been able to confirm this, and who keeps a bunch of scary masks on them? I mean, I guess the mission these people set out on was likely accomplished, because here we are, talking about this creepy prank. In our number 6 spot today we have the SS Yasim wreck. The SS Yasim was a Bolivian cargo ship that sank on the evening of December 1st, 2003. For a while, no one was quite sure as to why it sank, as well as the fact that no one could find the wreck. This was honestly very strange just in general, but also especially because of the fact that the ship was quite large at 265 feet. This is exactly why it was so surprising when, a few years ago, the Google Maps team located the sunken vessel based on their satellite imaging. The ship was found on its side, perhaps in the same location it initially sank, in Wingate Reef just off of the coast of Sudan. The mystery as to why the wreck was never found was realized because of the location of it. The wreck is close to an island where an uncontacted tribe lives. Of course, for the safety of both the tribe as well as outsiders who might not be welcomed, people thankfully tend to leave the island alone, but this is exactly why the wreck wasn't found for so long. This wreck then became one of the largest visible on Google Earth until quite recently. In our number 5 spot today we have the Gobi Desert structure. This is one discovery that I talked about recently, and it's one that had conspiracy theorists' minds absolutely swirling. About a decade ago, someone was searching through some Google Maps images when they found a mysterious array of structures and patterns that appeared to be etched into the surface of the Gobi Desert, which is located in China. The structures, as they are referred to, are kind of similar to geoglyphs, but these ones look modern and newly created, and rather than actually being carved into the ground, they're made of something. The internet, of course, came up with some pretty insane speculations of what these structures could be, or what they might be used for, and the ideas stretched from spy satellite calibration to some sort of Illuminati affiliated product, so who really knows at this point? In our number 4 spot today we have the perpetrators. Okay, so this picture is definitely not really terrifying itself, but the story behind it certainly is. So basically, in 2011, a woman who lives in Oklahoma City was unfortunately the victim of a terrible crime. She was held at gunpoint by one man while another raided her home. I can't even imagine. That must have been so terrible and terrifying. So imagine her surprise one day when a friend of hers was on Google Maps in her neighborhood, and who does she see other than the 2 people who committed this crime against her? They were seen on the street camera hanging out apparently near her home. She of course called the police and turned the images over to them, and it is said that they are using them in the investigation. It is unclear if they were ever able to catch the perpetrators or not, but hopefully this image proved to be useful. In our number 3 spot today we have the escape artist. Listen, not everything appears as it is on the surface, but this one at best is definitely fishy. Basically, it appears as if the Google Maps camera may have caught someone as they escape prison. This photo comes from Michigan, and it was taken by Google in front of the Lenawee County Jail. Basically, in the image, you see a guy walking in a white jumpsuit with black stripes, carrying a bag on his shoulder, with the jail visible in the background. When someone initially saw this on Google Maps, they of course screenshotted it and posted it to Reddit asking people if Google caught someone as they were escaping. Honestly, we aren't exactly sure, but it is entirely possible that this inmate was just a trusted one who was on some kind of work duty where they were doing some work outside of the fence. Perhaps whoever was supervising just wasn't in the view of the Google car. Either that or this guy's the most calm escapee I've ever seen. In our number 2 spot today we have caught red-handed. In 2008, a young man in Holland was biking home when 2 men ended up ambushing him, and they stole his bike, phone, and the cash he had on him. First, authorities were having trouble finding who the 2 men were that did this to him because of a lack of evidence, but just 6 months later there was a break in the case. The boy was looking at the street view of where the incident happened, and as he explored just a little bit, he found that the Google Maps car camera had captured the moments just prior to this terrible incident. That means that the camera captured the faces of those who had stolen his belongings. He ended up calling the police, who then called Google and asked for the unblurred versions of the photos. When Google delivered them, the police realized that they were able to directly identify the pair in the photo, who were a pair of 24-year-old brothers. Who knew that Google Maps could could help bring people to justice. In our number 1 spot today, we have the cold case. This is one thing that was discovered on Google Maps that is really similar to a story that I covered in part 1 of this series. Basically, in 2007, someone was on Google Maps when they spotted something in a body of water that appeared to them to be a car. It turns out that they were right, and they helped the authorities solve an over 20-year-old cold case. Apparently, a man named William Molt was reported missing from Florida on November 7th, 1997. He never returned home after a night out, and police had been searching for him ever since. Once that person in 2007 brought what they found to the police, they were able to investigate and they found the missing vehicle. Inside was a body that they were finally able to identify as the missing William. It truly is a very tragic story, but at least he was finally found so that he can be returned to his loved ones and they can have some closure to the story.